Attraction isn't built on how impressive you are. It's built on how impressive someone feels when they're around you. And the moment that you understand that, the entire dynamic flips. You stop trying to impress people and start making people want to impress you instead. In this video, I'm going to show you 5 common situations where people accidentally destroy attraction and the subtle move that shifts the entire dynamic to your favor. Now here's the part that most people don't realize. When you try too hard to impress someone, you accidentally make them feel smaller in your presence. And that's when their attraction quietly begins to collapse. Now this is where one of the most powerful ideas from the 48 Laws of Power enters the picture. Never outshine the master. Well, in seduction, the master isn't a king. It's the person whose ego you're trying to win. Come on, of course I'm not telling you to shrink yourself. And I'm definitely not telling you to become submissive. What I'm about to show you, it's far more strategic. How to let someone feel like the star of the interaction while you quietly become the person they feel most drawn to. So let's start with one of the most common places people accidentally destroy attraction, the first date. And there is a mistake people make on first dates that is so common. Most people don't even realize that they're doing it. They turn the date into an interview. Think about what usually happens. You sit down with someone you're attracted to, and suddenly your brain switches into impress mode. You start talking about your career, your achievements, the places you've traveled, your ambitions, maybe even your lifestyle. And without realizing it, you're trying to present the most impressive version of yourself. And logically, yeah, that does seem like the right move. I mean, after all, isn't dating supposed to be about showing someone why you're a great catch? Yeah, but psychologically, something very different is happening. The more that you try to prove how impressive you are, the more the other person starts feeling something subtle. Pressure, judgment, comparison. I mean, instead of relaxing into the conversation, their brain starts asking questions like this. Am I interesting enough for this person? Am I successful enough? Am I measuring up? And the moment someone starts feeling evaluated instead of valued, attraction begins to shrink. Because attraction doesn't grow in environments where someone feels like they're being tested. It grows in environments where someone feels like they are shining. This is where the dynamic flips. Instead of trying to show how interesting you are, you create moments where they feel interesting. For example, instead of saying something like, I've traveled to 15 different countries, you say something different. I mean, you ask, out of all the places you've been, what's the most interesting one? Tell me why. And whatever they say, act like they just blow up your mind. Now watch what happens psychologically. Their energy changes. Their eyes light up. They start telling a story. They become animated. They feel interesting. They feel engaging. They feel like they're the one bringing up something valuable to the conversation. And here's the fascinating part. Most people don't realize this, but in that moment, they start associating that good feeling with you, because you created the environment where they felt impressive. And that's the hidden rule that most people miss about attraction. People don't fall for the person who talks most about themselves. They fall for the person that makes them feel like the most interesting person in the room. That's how the dynamic flips. Instead of trying to prove your value, you quietly create situations where they start trying to prove theirs. Because the moment that someone starts trying to impress you, attraction has already begun. But here's where things get even more interesting. Because seduction doesn't always happen between two people. Sometimes the person who can make or break your attraction isn't even the one that you're trying to seduce. Yeah, it's the person sitting right next to them, their best friend. Think about how often this happens. You meet someone you're attracted to, and sooner or later, you end up around their closest friend. Maybe it's a group outing, maybe it's a party, or maybe it's a casual hangout. And this is where a lot of people make a huge strategic mistake. They treat the friend like an obstacle. They ignore them. They sideline them. Or worse, they try to outshine them. They focus all their attention on the person that they're attracted to, trying to look charismatic, trying to look interesting, and trying to win the spotlight. And without realizing it, yeah, they just created an enemy. Because that friend, that's not just another person in the room. They're the gatekeeper. They're the person that your target is going to talk to later that night. The person who will be asked, so what did you think about them? And if that friend felt ignored, overshadowed, or uncomfortable around you, they won't sabotage you openly. All it takes is just one small sentence. I don't know, something about them felt a bit off. And suddenly, attraction slows down. But when you understand never outshine the master, you play this situation very differently. Because in that moment, the master isn't the person that you're trying to seduce. It's their best friend. So instead of sidelining them, you do the opposite. You include them. You make them laugh. You ask their opinion. You give them moments to shine in the conversation. And now something very interesting starts happening. Instead of becoming an obstacle, they become your best wingman. Because when the night ends and your target asks, so, what did you think about them? The friend might say something very different. Honestly, yeah, I really liked them. They seem like a great person. And that one sentence, yeah, it can open a lot of doors that you didn't even know existed. Because in seduction, sometimes the fastest way to someone's heart is through the person that they trust the most. Let's shift gears. Now something interesting starts to happen. They start investing more effort into the interaction. They talk more. They ask more questions. They try harder to make a good impression. And that brings us to one of the most misunderstood dynamics in attraction, the chase. Most people think attraction grows when you impress someone enough to win them over. But psychologically, the opposite is often true. Attraction grows when someone starts feeling the need to win you over. Because human beings naturally value what they work for. Think about how often you've seen this happen. Someone meets a person they're attracted to, and immediately they start giving everything. All their attention, all their validation, and all their interest. They text first every single time. They compliment almost everything, and constantly. They try to prove how much they care. And at first, yeah, it does feel like the right move. But slowly, something strange begins to happen. The other person stops chasing. They stop investing. They stop trying. Because the moment that someone feels like they've already won your attention completely, their motivation to earn it disappears. But when you understand the deeper psychology of attraction, how you behave very differently. You stop trying to convince someone to like you, and instead, you create moments where they start wanting your approval. For example, instead of constantly proving how interesting you are, you show curiosity about them. Instead of flooding them with validation, you let them earn small moments of it. And instead of trying to impress, you give them opportunities to impress you. And something very powerful begins to happen. They start telling better stories. They start trying harder to make you laugh. They start showing you the best version of themselves. Because now, they are the one trying to win your attention. And the moment that someone starts chasing your approval, their attraction naturally grows. Not because you forced it, but because their own investment created it. Now that's the hidden psychology behind the chase. See, the most seductive people don't run after attention. They create situations where attention naturally gravitates toward them. Now, once you start understanding these dynamics, you begin noticing something fascinating. Attraction doesn't just shift during big moments. It shifts during very small interactions. Sometimes it shifts in something as simple as a compliment. And this is where a lot of people unknowingly destroy attraction without even realizing it. Picture this. You're talking to someone you're attracted to. The conversation is flowing. The energy is good. And then they say something like, "You seem really confident." Now, to most people, that feels like a great moment. So they respond in the most natural way possible. They reinforce it. They say something like, "Yeah, I've always been like that." Or, "Yeah, I've actually worked really hard on myself." And logically, there's nothing wrong with that response. But psychologically, something subtle just happened. The moment that you accept the compliment and build on it, the dynamic quietly shifts. Instead of attraction growing, a small ego competition begins. Now the attraction is about who is more impressive, who has more confidence, or maybe even who has more status. And the moment the conversation turns into a comparison, attraction begins to lose its spark, because attraction doesn't grow in competition. It grows in admiration. So the strategic move is something very different. Instead of absorbing the compliment, you redirect it. For example, when they say, "You seem really confident," hit back. Yeah, confidence is actually very easy, especially when you're around someone who's easy to talk to. Now, something completely different happens. Instead of the spotlight staying on you, it moves back to them. They feel attractive. They feel engaging. They feel like they contributed to the energy of the interaction. And just like in the first example, their mind begins associating that positive feeling with you, because you created the moment where they felt impressive. And that's the hidden move that most people miss in seduction. The most magnetic people, they don't collect admiration. They circulate it. They redirect it. They create an environment where the other person feels good about themselves. And the moment that someone feels that way around you, they naturally want to stay close to you. Now that is how attraction deepens. Not by proving your value, but by creating moments where you magnify theirs. Now there's one more mistake people make in attraction. And this one is surprisingly common. It happens during conversation, especially when the conversation becomes interesting. Picture this. You're talking to someone you're attracted to. The discussion becomes deeper. Maybe it's about ideas. Maybe it's about work, culture, or something you both care about. And suddenly, something subtle begins to happen. The conversation, it turns into a battle of intelligence. You start trying to sound sharper, more insightful, more knowledgeable. Maybe they say something and you correct them. Or maybe you challenge their idea. Or maybe you try to show that you've thought about the topic more deeply than they have. Logically, yeah, that might seem attractive. I mean, after all, intelligence is attractive. Confidence in your ideas is also attractive. But psychologically, something very different is happening. The moment a person becomes a competition, attraction begins to fade. Because instead of feeling interesting, the other person begins to feel tested. Instead of feeling admired, they feel evaluated. And the moment that someone feels like they're being intellectually judged, their guard goes up. The interaction becomes tense. Now, it's no longer a moment of connection. It's a debate. And debates, they rarely build attraction. But the strategic move is surprisingly simple. Instead of trying to win the intellectual exchange, you let the other person feel like they just shared something insightful. For example, they explain something about an idea that they're passionate about. Now, instead of saying, I don't think that's correct, or that's not how it works, you say something like, wow, that's actually an interesting way to look at it. Or, wow, I've never thought about it like that. Yeah, you do make a good point. Now something very different happens. Instead of feeling challenged, they feel understood. And instead of feeling judged, they feel intellectually valued. And that feeling is incredibly powerful in attraction because people are deeply drawn to those that make them feel seen and appreciated. And once again, the dynamic flips. Instead of trying to prove your intelligence, you create an environment where the other person feels interesting and insightful. And the fascinating part is this. When someone feels smart around you, yeah, they start wanting more conversations with you. They want to share more ideas, more thoughts, more stories because your presence becomes a place where their mind feels valued. And that is far more attractive than winning an argument. Because in seduction, the goal isn't to prove that you're the smartest person in the room. It's rather to create a space where the other person loves how they feel when they are talking to you. And when you master that, conversation stops being a competition and starts becoming one of the most powerful tools of attraction. See, winning the debate might boost your ego. I get it, but losing the debate? Yeah, now that's what might win their attraction. Now, if you look carefully at the 5 situations that we just explored, they all revolve around the same hidden dynamic. The moment that someone feels smaller in your presence, the magic disappears. But the moment that someone feels interesting, valued, and impressive around you, they start trying to impress you. Now that's the real art of seduction, not a weakness. Strategy. Because the most seductive people in the world, yeah, they don't try to dominate the room. They create a new room where everyone else feels like they shine. And the person who creates that feeling is the one people become drawn to. All right, now I'm curious about something. Have you ever noticed attraction died the moment that you tried too hard to impress someone? What happened? I read the comments, by the way. But attraction isn't the only place that this rule matters. In the next video, we're going to talk about how the same exact mistake destroys your relationship with narcissistic personalities. So if you want to understand attraction, social dynamics, and power more deeply, make sure you subscribe. See you next Tuesday. Until next time, this was Social Chess with Mo Faris. Check me.